welcome to meal pattern requirements. So let's go through the meal pattern requirements. This will be for adults and for our adult daycare centers and for our child care centers. So any information you can find here on page 143, adult daycare 133, or on at risk on page 111. So we will get started with meal patterns. We do have meal patterns for breakfast. If you serve lunch or supper, it is the same meal pattern, and snacks. So whatever meal that you are serving, you have to follow the meal pattern for that meal service. With CAC, we have 5 components, which we will be going over here later on. You must offer the minimum serving size for it to be considered a reimbursable meal. You can always serve more food. You cannot serve less. And then every year with CACFP, it's required that the facility has annual training. And one topic that of annual training must be is meal pattern requirements. So the age groups that we will go over today are infants, 1 to 2-year-olds, 3 to 5-year-olds, 6 to 12-year-olds, 3 to 18-year-olds, which is our at-risk program, and then our adult daycare participants. Now, when it does come to the meal patterns, infants are served something different. Mostly it's formula than anybody else. So we do understand that just because an infant turns 1 year of age, that they may not be completely on milk yet, they still may be having formula. It is allowable to do that. There is a transition period for 30 days. So once that child turns 1, they have 30 days to start going from formula to milk. So again, you can serve an infant formula up until they turn 13 months of age. But once they become 13 months of age, they do need to have milk instead of iron fortified formula. They can have breast milk, which we'll talk about. Breast milk is always allowable. But if they do still need to have formula, then we do have to have a doctor's note. So when we talk about meal patterns, I'll kind of talk about it over and over again, but this is what is required to be a reimbursable meal for CACFP. If you're doing anything different than what is stated here, in order for it to be a reimbursable meal, you must have a note from a doctor, a recognized medical authority. So at breakfast, we have 3 components. So we have milk, vegetable, fruit, or a combination of both, and we have a grain. You are allowed to replace the grain for a meat up to 3 times per week on the CACFP meal patterns. So with the breakfast meal pattern that you see here, this is for our child care. It's broken up in ages 1 to 2, 3 to 5, 6 to 12, and then 13 to 18. And the 6 and up really do get the same exact thing. In childcare and daycare centers, children are not allowed to go to daycare after age 13 unless it's a disability, but we do have our at-risk programs and shelters, so they do service children up to age 18. That's why there is this last column. And again, you may have someone that is disabled and they are over the age of 12, and again, 6 and up, it is the exact same meal pattern. So for breakfast, as you can see here, we have fluid milk, and they have to have at least a half of a cup. At 3 to 5, they have to have 6 fluid ounces, and 6 and older, they have to have 1 cup. With vegetable or fruit or a combination or both, at breakfast, it's required for the 1 to 2-year-olds to have a 1/4 of a cup. It's a 1/2 of a cup for the 3 to 5-year-olds and for the 6 and older. And then we have the grain component. So we have with grain, the grain stays the same through all for the meal patterns throughout. For the childcare, it is a 1/2 ounce equivalent from 1 to 5-year-olds, and then from 6 and up, it's a 1 ounce equivalent. And again, you can replace the grain for a meat up to 3 times per week on the CACFP. You can always serve more, but again, you cannot serve less. Now we have our adult daycare centers, and our adult daycares, it's the same components, the same rules apply, that you can substitute a grain for a meat up to 3 times per week, but the serving sizes are different for our adult day participants. They have one cup of milk at breakfast, then they have a 1/2 of a cup of fruit, vegetable, or a combination of both. And then when it comes to the grain requirement for our adult participants, it's a minimum of 2 ounce equivalent. Lunch. So lunch and supper, it is the same components. It's actually the same meal pattern. You serve the same amounts when it comes to lunch and or supper. But the 5 components are milk, vegetable, fruit, grain, and a meat alternate. At lunch or supper, you are allowed to replace the fruit for a vegetable. So instead of serving a fruit and a vegetable, you can serve 2 vegetable if you would like. You must serve all 5 components in order for the meal to be reimbursed. Now you take a look here, this is the child care meal patterns. And again, we have the 1 to 2 year olds. They have to have, again, a half a cup of milk. It is 3/4 of a cup from those 3 to 5 year olds. And for 6 and older, it is 1 cup. And a lot of times in our child care centers, I have seen the 2 and 3 year olds in the same room. If you do have the 2 to 3 year olds in the same room, my biggest suggestion to you, instead of being like, well, you're 2, you only get this. And if you're 3, you get this, as I would serve the 2 year olds in the room, the 3 to 5 meal pattern, just to make it easier for the teachers. That way everybody gets the same. Again, you can always serve more, you just cannot serve less. Now, meat alternate that's served at lunch, it's 1 ounce equivalent, or 1 ounce for the 1 to 2 year olds. It's 1.5 ounces for 3 to 5 year olds. And for 6 and older, they have to have 2 ounces of meat alternate. And then when we get to the vegetable, as you can see down here, if you need serving sizes, so this information is located under the meat in the food buying guide, but this is from helpful hints of how to serve, like cheese and eggs. It's really nice that it is here on the meal patterns to make things a little bit easier. With the vegetable that is served for lunch or supper, it's 1/8 of a cup. For the 1 to 2 year olds, 1/4 of a cup. For the 3 to 5, and then 1/2 a cup for 6 and older. And the fruit is 1/8 of a cup as well for the 1 to 2, 1/4 of a cup for the 3 to 5, and then it's lowered to 1/4 of a cup to the 6 through 12. And then our grain, again, the grain stays consistent throughout the all the meal patterns for childcare, and it's a 1/2 ounce equivalent for 1 to 5 year olds, and then again for 6 and older, it is a 1 ounce equivalent of grain for lunch. For our adult daycares, they have 1 cup of milk at lunch or supper. They have 2 ounces of meat alternate. Their vegetable is 1/2 a cup, the fruit is 1/2 a cup, and their grain is 2 ounce equivalent. And that is the lunch or supper meal pattern for the adult daycare. The last meal service that we have is snack. Now, out of snack, you have available to you all 5 components. So you can serve a milk, grain, meat alternate, fruit, or vegetable. You can serve any 5, and every day it can be different, but you do have to select 2. And the child has to have 2 of any of the 5 components that you want. You can't serve the same. So you can't serve, like, say, apple juice and a banana. They're both a fruit. You have to have 2 separate components for snack. You can do something like milk and graham crackers, which would be milk and a grain. You can do apples and peanut butter, which would be a meat alternate, and a fruit. You could also do, say, chips and salsa. Salsa would be a vegetable, and then the grain for the chips. So again, you have to have 2 separate items. You do not have to serve milk, and you do not have to serve juice. You could serve water if you wanted to, as long as 2 components are offered and taken. So again, here's the serving sizes for the snack meal pattern. The milk, it lowers for the 3 to 5 year olds, and it does. So in all the other meal patterns, it goes 1/2 a cup, 3/4 a cup, and 1 cup. And when it comes to snack, for the 1 to 2 year olds and the 3 to 5 year olds, they can both have 1/2 a cup. And then the 6 to 12, they get 1 cup. That does not change. The meat alternate, it's 1/2 of an ounce for those 1 through 5, and then 6 and older have 1 ounce equivalent of meat alternate. When we get to vegetable, now the vegetable does increase in fruit, so do watch that. So at snack, the fruit and the vegetable, they are 2 separate components, but they are the same amount required, which is 1/2 of a cup for those 1 to 5. And then those 6 and older have to have 3/4 cup. So again, watch out for that because it is more than at any other meal services. And it sometimes can throw people off. For instance, like a regular size banana and a regular orange, like not a mandarin, but a regular size orange. Those are considered a half of a cup. So if you were to serve a banana or a regular orange at snack to those that are 6 and older, make sure that you're giving them at least 1.5 to 2, because only one of those would not be enough for snack. And then the grain stays the same as a 1/2 ounce equivalent from 1 to 5, and then 6 and older, it is 1 ounce equivalent. And then our adult daycares, if they have a snack, they have to have the 2 components, but their serving sizes, again, is the 1 cup of milk. Their meat alternate is a 1 ounce. Their vegetable and fruit is also a 1/2 of a cup. That stays pretty consistent. And the grain required for snack is 1 ounce equivalent.